Alfie Alvarado Ramos. Alfie, you were born in Puerto Rico and you went on to serve 22 years of active duty. And when you retired 24 years ago, you were Command Sergeant Major of Madigan Army Medical Center and Troop Command Joint Base Lewis McChord. Then you started a whole new career in the Washington State Department of Veterans Affairs. And so all of that experience made you completely and utterly qualified for your current position of Director of Washington State Department of Veterans Affairs. But you're going to take us back in your story to a time not so long ago when you had to make a surprisingly hard choice accepting that position. First, though, you also have a story about this photo from your childhood. What is it?
So that picture, the original picture is fuzzy. That's why the picture you're seeing is fuzzy there. I am on the left-hand side, my sister Yolanda in the center, and my brother Fred is there with us. What I really want to bring your attention is to the back of us. Our house was a wood house with tin roof, and when you see it in the back, it was up on cement props. When my father bought that house, it was very old. And I can tell you that as we were, and it was a two-bedroom house, very, very tiny. When we walked inside of that house and we ran, we had to run very softly. Because if we ran too hard, and you know how kids run, our foot would go right through the wooden floor. That's how old it was. The walls, were kind of eaten by termites, and there were holes in them that we had to put newspaper to make sure that at night, the roaches and flying varmint would not come into the house. That's poor. And interestingly, all of us slept in the same bed. And my brother was a bedwetter. So that really kind of put us in a very close situation. And so this childhood picture that I had not looked for a little bit of time brought a lot of memories because when you look at us, we're very well dressed. And one of the things that our mother told us, especially when we had our clothes very well starched, iron, they smell good, they smell like the sun because they're dried in the sunshine, was you can be poor, but you can't be a pig. That was something very, that stuck with me when it comes to, how our families dressed and, how we comported. Because, it was something that she taught us very early on, that just because you come from a certain upbringing and you are financially challenged, that you don't have to be like that, that you can rise above to be able to make sure that you can be the best. So that's kind of, what the picture brought to me, and it's something that, it just lives right here in my heart because, of those teachings. So what I'm going to be talking today is going to be about the issue of transition. Transition and how a seemingly simple, because it was not a great decision, a simple thing can actually get in the way of being able to reach your maximum potential. So it goes back to 2012, November, when the general election took place and we got a new governor. Governor Gregoire decided not to run, and Governor Inslee and I can't remember the other candidate's name right now, McKenna, run for election. Prior to that, earlier that year, the Director of Veterans Affairs, I was the Deputy Director, decided to retire. And it was not a secret with the veterans community that I really wanted to be able to get that position. And through the years, because I belong to a national organization, I would sit down with all our legislators in Washington, D.C., and to be able to talk about legislative issues, the State Department of Veterans Affairs, what veterans needed in the state of Washington, and met a number of times with then Representative Jay Inslee. So I got to know him on a professional basis and not a, not a personal basis. Also, during that time, in 2012, there was a significant move by the veterans community to be able to let the candidate know that they wanted Alfie Alvarado to be the next director of Veterans Affairs. So it didn't come as a surprise when in November 16th of 2012, I got a call from the governor-elect who asked me if I would want to be part of his team as the director of Veterans Affairs. And of course, I didn't say, well, let me think about it, Gov. I said yes. And I will tell you that the very first call that I made was to my wife, who probably is up there somewhere. And I called my mom to be able to let her know, and she was extremely proud. And then a day later, I called my team to be able to give them the good news. And I will tell you, when you have elections like that, it is a very tenuous time. Everybody's on pins and needles. Because if you're at will, your life can change. And the one thing when I sat down with my team, it was, I have some news for you. The governor has asked me to be the director of Veterans Affairs. It was one of those moments when everybody held their breath. The one thing that Jay Inslee did for me was he allowed for me to choose my team. And at that point in time, we had a magnificent group of people who were working with me, and therefore, I wanted to retain them all. But I can tell you that in the political world, there are times when the chief executive comes, they will bring in people that they have worked with, or they work the campaign and they want a place for them, or they know about an agency that may have problems, and they want to be able to change things, and therefore they make significant personal changes that a director may not have control over. And I was fortunate enough to be able to keep the same team that I had. So we made the announcement. Everybody was happy because the pins and needles were gone. And then it came time for me to think about this transition. So I had a very comfortable office that was kind of made for me. As you probably can tell, I'm kind of vertically challenged. And everything was kind of made for me. As far as the light colors in my furniture, a table that I had that had the chairs to be able to work with people, a wonderful whiteboard to be able to put all of my, my sketches and my doodling and all that. And well, the director then had an office that was gray, had a couple of wing chairs, opulent, dark furniture. I also drove a hybrid car because I wanted to be able to have a small footprint and be able to make my contribution, while the director's car was a large, leather, all the powers, gas hog. So I was going, well, I think I'm pretty comfortable in my office right now. I think I'm going to stay there and just keep the things that I have and not move. The offices were right next to each other. And I went over next door to the director then, and I'll call him John because his name is John. And I said, John, I think I'm going to stay in my office because everything is just right and I feel pretty comfortable in there. And he just goes, well, that sounds pretty good. Your deputy can just start moving whenever he feels, like moving. And at that moment, kind of the hair just rose in the back of my head. And I felt this trepidation and this anxiety, something that I had never felt before. And I couldn't understand why. So that evening, as I drove home, I just kept asking the question, why? Why do I feel like that? And it just, I had an epiphany in which it came back to my upbringing. I'm going to tell you that my family, especially my father and my mother, were pillars of the community, people who would do all kinds of things for others without looking for a reward or personal gain. And that was something that was inculcated in all of us. When you do things, do them quietly. Don't splash. You don't need to get more than what you need. Be satisfied, because otherwise it's just a waste. Be happy with what you've got. Be happy with good enough, because then you can contribute to others and you be humble. And I think that was one of the things that affected me in such fashion because moving to the bigger office, and being uncomfortable, because that was the fact, my furniture fitted me. This man was 6'3", and everything was, probably about 5 or 6 inches taller than what I was used to, was kind of a symbol. And we'll tell you a little bit more of my upbringing and try to kind of tie it together to make sure that I don't ramble too much. But my mom is 85 years old. To this day, she still visits people and feeds, the ill as part of the work that she does. She's 85 years old, and she goes visit the old people to be able to serve them. Most of those people are younger than she is. And she's one of those people that goes on stealth mode. Nobody knows what she's doing. She drives still, which scares us to death. And you can tell by all the scrapes on the side of the car every time she tries to get the car out of the, just out of the house. But she taught us, that, and even without telling us, just by her example, that when you give and you give quietly and you don't make a fuss about it, you're doing God's work. Okay. So for me, going back to this issue of the office thing, when I came back, when I went home, I just kind of went, there's just something in here that it doesn't feel right, and identified that particular issue. Had I not moved from my office into the corner office where usually directors are, I probably would have stayed in an operational mode instead of strategic, because my mindset would have stayed right there, inside of what was comfortable for me instead of being uncomfortable. And it would probably have confused our staff because they wouldn't know where to go because they always went to the director's office that way. And therefore, I made that decision. I said, you know what, I'm walking it back, I'm going to move. So I let the director, then I said, John, I just thought about it, I'm going to move to the office. And again, he just said, fine. Now, it's 2 moves, but that's just fine. I didn't want to buy new furniture because we were in a really bad situation then in the agency, so I just stayed, with the stuff that he had. But that taught me a lot of lessons, in being able to look at being good enough, in being to have this humility that is sometimes taught to us, and especially how women are taught, that don't expect to get, more than what you've got, or be happy with what you have. It's just not good enough. We have to leap. We have to just go beyond what we think is comfortable. And get into the discomfort, because it's about jumping into the pool instead of just dangling your feet and just kind of getting them wet. So the moral of the story is that John and I, on a Saturday, went to that office. I helped him pack, and he helped me paint the gray office with a bright yellow that when people came back on that Monday, they complained that they needed sunglasses to be able to go into my office. So the things that I learned, that I try based on this lesson, and a lot of the things that I have learned in my life, and those that I mentor, there is several things. Number one, embrace discomfort, because that's very important. Number two, volunteer. Volunteer, because when I saw my mom's example, I volunteered to do things with nursing homes, with people that I loved, to be able to give quietly with nobody looking. And also, there's one lesson, and I just can't remember it right now, but it's about choosing excitement over fear. So my lesson was that all this issue about being comfortable, about having the familiarity of my office, about not moving, was about fear. And I couldn't identify it, I couldn't put my finger on it. And the fact was that I chose to be excited about the move and just leave behind that fear that I had to be able to again be able to move, and from this operational side to then be able to be strategic, from being in the back of the room with the line staff and the managers making sure that we were operationally sound, to move to the front of the room and be able to be with the leadership, with fellow directors, where I could, wheel and deal, and start making, agreements and be able to bring what they call the bacon home to the agency and make sure that our agency was recognized not as the 25-pound monkey among 800-pound gorillas like DSHS and Department of Corrections, but ensure that our agency was known for the work that it does. And now I work with an agency that has an incredible team that works with me, that is not just a good enough agency, but it's probably one of the best in the country. Thank you.